How's it going, everybody? Today we're going to talk about tuning your marine carburetor. We're going to talk about the idle mixture screws here. We're going to talk about how to properly set up the electronic choke. There's also some little bits that we need to talk about, such as the fuel screen that's in there. We also have an accelerator cam that we need to often adjust, and there's the other idle mixture screw over there. We'll talk about that. And then here's the curb idle screw. There's a adjustment that needs to be made there as well. And we'll talk a little bit about the recommended RPMs for this as well, so stay tuned. Let's talk about some tools that you're going to need before you kick this process off. I always have a flathead with me, although it's not directly required if you don't want to make a change to your accelerator pump. But you do need a Phillips and a 3/8, and then you also need like a crescent wrench to back up the adjustment for the accelerator pump, so you may need another one of those as well. And then you'll need, I know, what's it gonna be? Yes, a vacuum gauge tester. We'll actually probably start using this in part 2, but if you don't have one already, you're definitely gonna need one. This one I got off of Amazon. It's amazing because look at this. It has all these little accessories to get vacuum, right? From your intake, or even from your base of your carburetor, or even from the base of the carburetor itself. And lots of different little fittings. It saves you some time of having to go to the store. And then it looks like there's also one where you can pull off of the PCV valve as well. Okay, and then it comes with a little bit of hose. This is going to be a requirement, right? So as you're moving forward, if you don't have one of these already, you're gonna have to go and buy one. I'll put a link in the description, okay, on where to get it. Super cheap, like I said, 20 bucks. If you don't have one and you're tuning your carburetor, you're gonna have to buy it. All right, so anyway, let's get to it. Let's kick things off here. All right, so this is one of the things that I've seen before, where it's a line that connects to your mechanical fuel pump. Now, from my understanding with this, what it does is it takes excess fuel and it circulates it back into the fuel pump. You'll see in this case, this one has since been clogged up, and even on some of the aftermarket marine carburetors I've seen, this line is always open and clear. So my recommendation is, if you have it like this here, you want to get some sort of pipe cleaner and clean that out, so if for some reason that fuel does need to vent out, it's not clogged like this one is. All right, that's my 2 cents there. Now let's talk about the idle mixture screws. If you've just got done rebuilding your carburetor like this one has, this one's just been rebuilt, you're gonna wanna start by turning your idle mixture screw clockwise. Now what Holly's gonna recommend once you've turned it clockwise is your starting point to kick things off is 1.5 turns. So watch me here. We're going to turn it counterclockwise, 1.5 turns. All right, and there's 1.5. Okay, so one more time just to show you. Here we go. Let's close it all up. All right, so it's fully closed clockwise. We're going to spin it around 1 full time, that's 1, and then a half. All right, so that's going to be your base setting. Let's turn this around to the other side of the metering valve here so you can see, and we want to do the same thing here. Let's close it by turning it clockwise. All right, and it closes kind of at an odd angle, but that's okay. Let's flip it around 1 time. All right, and then a half. So your idle mixture screws at this point are good to go. This is for part 1 of this video. You've hopefully just rebuilt your carburetor, right? Because that is the base setting that you're gonna need. Now, since we're facing this direction, let's talk about the choke here, all right? Now, the choke has these little index lines right up here. Now, also on the black part, I think you can see it right there. Yeah, there's that little notch. Yours is gonna have that notch too. Now, there's a trick to the electronic choke. What you're going to be doing, just so you're aware here, is if you rotate the housing counterclockwise, that's going to richen the fuel mixture. Okay, so counterclockwise, that's going to richen the fuel mixture. If you rotate the housing clockwise, that's going to lean the mixture, which for layman terms, what that's going to do is it's going to kick off the choke sooner. All right, obviously like when it's lean. So let's go and adjust this, because you can clearly see this one is not within specification. So we're going to go ahead and loosen this up if I can get to it here. And there is a third screw at the bottom. All right, let's loosen this one up just a little bit more. Okay. And like I said, you can see, and it's not this black mark, right? That's not what I'm looking at, is this little notch, and it's actually on the choke. So let's go ahead. You can see it a little bit better here. Let's go ahead and put it, we're gonna line it up with this little metal index line that's back here. So let's go ahead and set that. All right, so that's gonna be a good baseline for your electronic choke. Now, depending on your scenario, if it seems like your motor needs to idle a little bit longer with maybe a richer mix, then as I mentioned earlier, right, just turn the full housing, right, to a counterclockwise, or move that notch, right, a little bit further down this way. It's all depending on where you live, right? If you live in a really cold climate and you're wanting to go boating more towards the later part of the season, you may need a choke longer, right? Or more rich mixture may be needed. So that's it right there. All right. So what I've done here, and you can tune this at any point in time, right? But for baseline purposes, with all these lines, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We got 10, and I am 1, 2, 3, 4. I am 5. I'm like right in the middle, or lined up with this other metal index that you can barely see, but I think I can see it in the camera. But anyway, that's going to be your electronic choke. Very important. So we talked about the idle mixture screws, the baseline there that needs to be 1.5 turns. We talked about the electronic choke, which is going to be something we need to talk about too. And let's spin this around. Talk about the next little guy here. Okay. So what we're going to do now is let's talk a little bit about the input line. With this model, this is a 1360 or part number 987014, but and like the carburetor terms for most cars, or what Hollywood call it, is kind of like a 4160. But keep in mind, this is a marine carburetor. So with this model, there's actually going to be a fuel screen that exists in this little line right here. If you haven't rebuilt your carburetor, then this fuel line, or this fuel screen here on this input line, may possibly be clogged. So keep that in mind. You're going to have to unscrew this main fitting here, and you'll see there's a screen in there. And sometimes if you don't have a good filter, this will get clogged up. So that, and part of the tuning process, in my opinion, mandatory, you're going to need to clean that screen out. All right, let's see if I can get a good shot of the cam here for the accelerator pump. All right, that is a good shot right there. What makes things interesting here with this accelerator cam pump here is, this is where you need to put your 3/8 up here. And you'll notice as I'm rotating it that it does actually have a bolt at the bottom that you need to lock up as well. So technically you need 2 3/8 to make adjustments to this this cam screw for the accelerator pump. Now, what the manual calls for are these settings here. So take a look on the screen, right? So metric is 0.38, and then for inches, 0.0015, or what you can see here with the feeler gauge. You can see it's really super flimsy, okay? All right, what you're gonna wanna do is you wanna be able to put this feeler gauge in between that cam, and you can see this one, I did play with it a little bit off camera because it does take a little bit. It takes like 2 hands, and you got to flip this thing upside down to get to it really well. But that's going to be the recommendation for the Accelerator cam pump. Now, the main thing here with this is if you're noticing you don't have a lot of performance, or there's some sort of lack of performance, or it's bogging down a little bit, then that may be something that you need to adjust. But at idle, it's not going to be something that's going to affect idle speed per se, unless you have that thing completely off. Now the Accelerator pump does have another setting. It actually has 3 different settings you can see here, and this is where I was talking about with the flathead, is you can actually take this flathead screw out, and you can put it in these other 2 positions, and what that does is it causes the Accelerator pump to engage earlier. And the benefit to the Accelerator pump engaging earlier is you're going to have a lot more power right off the line, which may or may not be more beneficial for your application depending on what you're looking for. But for tuning, I figured I'd cover it here. But yeah, there's this one actually only has the 2 settings, but I've seen different Accelerator pump adjusters that you can even have more than that. But yeah, this one's got 2 different ones. All right, and then here is this little guy here. This is your curb idle speed screw, and then this is essentially what you're going to be adjusting, whether it be, you can see it, check this lever here out, watch. You see it move back or forth. This is going to be so you can get your RPMs adjusted properly. Now, most people, because of the way their motors are and some of these older engines, they like to adjust it like in upwards of like 1,000 RPMs. If you have a cone clutch, probably not the worst thing, but if you have the clutch dog style or the older OMCs, this RPM being too high can actually destroy that clutch in your lower unit. So the recommendation that you need to be doing as you're adjusting your curb idle screw is you really do need a target between 650 to 700 RPMs. If you don't have, or you can't get that adjustment properly, then you may need to look at either rebuilding your carb because there's something wrong with the carb itself, or you just have bad engine performance. But either way, the recommendation is going to be 650 to 700 RPMs. All right, so we talked about the Accelerator cam pump and the recommendation for that. We talked about the idle mixture screw, and make sure your 1.5 turns for your baseline is the same on each side. Now, on some of the higher performance carburetors, and we won't show any of those in this series, but on this metering block, you'll also have it in the back. So you'll actually need to adjust all 4 ports for it in order to get it accurate. All right, but in this case, we only have 1 metering block, so we're only gonna adjust to 2. All right, and then we talked about the curb idle screw as well, and remember, 650 to 700 is gonna be your target point. And then on the other side, we talked about the electronic choke and how that needs to be set up as well. And last but not least, don't forget to clean out this fuel screen in here. As always, you definitely want to be rebuilding a lot of these old carburetors. If you're watching this video and you say to yourself, hey, I'm having like a lot of issues per se, maybe with my carburetor, considering rebuilding it. I've got an hour-long video where I actually rebuild this exact carburetor, and it's, in my opinion, it's not that hard to do, and the rebuild kit is not that expensive. So I'll throw a link to that in the comments field. Check it out, rebuild your carburetor if needed. This is gonna be part 1. This is on what we call like a 4160 marine carburetor. If you have any questions or anything like that, throw some comments in the comments field below. We are gonna do a part 2 minimum on this one, where we actually set the idle speed on a 2-barrel, which is gonna be a little different than this, but it still has many of the same functions that you'll see. And that piece is going to be a lot more useful maybe to some people who are looking for actually setting it up while it's on the boat. All right, so stay tuned while we talk further in the later episodes on your marine carburetor. Hope you liked the episode. Subscribe if you're not already subscribed to my channel. Hit that like button if you thought it was helpful, and we will catch you on the next episode. Have a good one, everybody. Take it easy.